This is the Hope Not Note podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by nope.
I'm Dr. Dylan Caswell.
And I'm Brandy.
And we're here to bring you out of the nope and into hope.
Welcome to episode 9 of the Hope Not Note podcast. We are so excited that you are here, tuning in, listening, and we are excited to be with you as well. At the beginning of each podcast, we share a hope story, and Dylan is going to hop right in and share his hope story.
All right, we're going first, kicking it off.
Yeah.
So my hope story, football season, opening day will be tomorrow from when this episode is released. Mm-hmm. I promise I will not make my hope story every week about the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll try my best to not do that. But my hope story comes from what Andy Reid does with the team on Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, they have a section of practice where the players get to basically show him plays that they've created. And this is where, if you watch the Chiefs or seen the highlights, you see these plays of like them going like ring around the rosy in the huddle and like all these crazy plays. But they practice them, and Coach Reid has the players show him those plays, and then he'll write them down. And yeah, we can use this in a game, or no, this one's not developed yet. But it's really incredible because I think nowadays we see so many youths just quit playing sport. And it's because they have a coach that is screaming at them, because the coach perceives that if they're screaming, that's what's going to create respect for them. So you got to go out there, you got to run more, you got to do this, you got to listen to me. Versus having the players be part of it. So obviously, like a youth athlete's not going to be able to be doing all of those things, but just making them part of the process, right? So out of the, 100 plays that are called a game, Andy Reid is calling maybe one play that the players created. But that week, that Wednesday, when they get to go out and show and have accountability and have their creativity and just be able to show it to their head coach, it brings the team together. It makes the players really respect the coach. And Andy Reid, even not like as a Chiefs coach, but when he was with the Eagles and everything he's done, he's just a phenomenal coach that I think we can all look up to and learn something from.
Well, I love that. That's so good. We were watching Quarterback and on Netflix, and I was just so inspired by the way that he coaches and the example that Dylan just gave, because when you, as an athlete, when you do something that you're investing in, you're going to be more passionate and you're going to perform better. Yeah. And that, I feel like that's Andy Reid's like philosophy on Wednesdays is like, hey, what have my players been investing in and how can I support that, you know? So that's awesome. Great hope story. We love football. So again, we'll do our best to not always have our highlights and our hope stories be about football, but we're big sport fans, but specifically football. So my hope story is actually, it's not similar in regards to football, but in regards to sport. One of my good friends reached out to us, and she is a wife, a mom of 10, a grandma of 1 who is living in her house. So she's often on baby duty. She was a collegiate athlete and a personal trainer at one point in her life, like just this all-star woman who I've had the privilege of knowing and working with her for, I think, like 4 or 5 years. And during that time, we would often talk about just like her struggle with food and just the dieting waves and the gaining weight, losing weight, and all these different things. And it's just been a big struggle for her. And one of the reasons why is because she has 10 kids and she's constantly moving. She's just a mom that is like always on the go, and that's just how she is, you know. But this past weekend, she went on a conference, or maybe it was like a full week, I'm not sure, but she reached out after this conference because the conference was faith-based, but it was with her kids. And so she watched how a couple of her teenage kids were completely transformed, but then she was also really impacted and transformed. And the takeaway from that conference was she needs to reclaim her health. Wow. And so for this, 45-ish year old woman who, again, mom of 10, to reach out to us and say, Brandy, Dylan, I've seen what you guys have been doing. She lives here locally. I've seen what you guys have been doing, and I want to be I want to be part of that, and I want to reclaim that. And the only way I'm going to do that is if I commit and I have it in my schedule, because my schedule gets filled up. And so I want to prioritize this. When she reached out to me, I was so encouraged. Like, I was so encouraged and so excited, because she's an all-star and she's a trooper and like has suffered crazy loss and is one of the most joyful people I've ever met for the suffering that she has endured. And she wouldn't mind me saying this, but she's lost 2 of her children, one to a brain tumor and one to a car accident. And like, for her to go through all that suffering, she is so joyful. But for her to say, my next step in my healing journey at 45 years old, or however old she is to reclaim my health, that is going to catapult her in so many other areas. Like, I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. So we're going to start working with her and do performance coaching with her and hope coaching with her, and really help her do exactly her goal and reclaim her health.
I'm speechless. I'm excited, and just the courage and ownership. And we've talked about self-agency, and that's what makes these things happen. Is that I could do this on my own. She has a phenomenal background. She's very well educated, very well versed in sport, has endured suffering, is joyful. She has the tools. But to say, yeah, you know what, I could use a little bit of accountability. I could use some people on my team to get me there. That, I don't know what to say. I'm blown away.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to get to work with her. We both are. But it makes me want to invite the listeners, if you're in an area of your life where you're looking to reclaim your health, or you need a little extra accountability or a little extra nudge, we do offer performance coaching. We do offer hope coaching. We want to coach you. And this podcast is, a free way that we can share our perspective. But if you're looking for individualized conversation, like that is the way to do it. And we're excited to help serve you. And so if you want to do that, head over to our website, hopenotnope.org, because we would love to, be able to work with y'all.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm just thinking about this, that there are some people that I just send hype messages like week after week or daily. Like, one of my friends struggling through the workday. Hey, Dylan, I know I need to go to the gym. I don't want to go. Give me a speech to make me go to the gym. So, okay, let me hit you with a speech quick and get you to that gym. So it can take many shapes or forms.
Exactly. I love it. Let's hop into our questions. Our first question is from a listener named Mitch, and he asks, what advice would you give to someone struggling with getting a good night's sleep because of their life circumstances, like having a newborn, working third shift, or different sleep disorders? And I know in our last podcast, we talked a lot about sleep, but hopefully this will have a little bit different answer, because it's more about like their life circumstances versus the other one we were talking about.
Yeah. Thank you for submitting that. I love that the name comes with it, because it makes me think the last time I heard Mitch was when I was in high school. And so I'm so excited to hear there's multiple people in the world probably named Mitch, but I'm just excited to hear that name. And this is a great question, because, right, like you get on this routine, you hear all these things from, we talked about the sleep doctor, and then Matthew Walker has like the sleep lab and all this really good stuff, and you know what to do to get a good night's sleep, but the circumstances are not allowing you to do that. The third shift, newborn baby at home, different circumstances, waking you up at night. Like, sometimes these things are out of your control. And I will say, not that Mitch is a firefighter, but shout out to the firefighters, the medical providers, the people that are working crazy into the night, because there's a lot of data showing how unhealthy that is. Even if you get home in the morning and you go to sleep. My mom did this for years. She'd work nights. She'd get home 7 a.m., get us to school, and she'd sleep from 7 to 2:30, and then she'd get up, take us to football, basketball, whatever was going on, and then go and do that again 5 to 6 days a week. And the life that can take off of someone, because you're not getting quality sleep between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. And through the nighttime, your body is naturally saying it's time for you to go to sleep. And so you're using stimulants to try to stay up, whether it's caffeine, energy drinks, slapping yourself in the face, whatever it may be, but you're doing something to keep yourself awake. So it's a challenge. What I would say is in those circumstances where you're not able to, go to bed at 10 or 11 p.m. and then sleep until 6 a.m. or whatever your wake up time is, like you're getting this interrupted sleep. One way that we can start to combat that, if you've decreased the temperature in your room, um, you've done all these other things, blackout curtains or things like that, like you've taken care of the controllables, but you're still struggling, you look for the hidden time in the day to get a nap in. It's not ideal. It's not the perfect situation, but shout out to the firefighters. When fire truck is going by, they must have heard, hopefully everyone's okay.
Yeah.
But it would be, look for those pockets of sleep that you can get in. I've had the honor of working with a good amount of firefighters and police officers, and it's one of the hardest challenges that we have to their tendon healing. Like they'll come in with an elbow tendinopathy, rotator cuff tendinopathy, or glute tendinopathy. So what do we need to heal that? We need load. Load will help to heal that. We also need IGF-1 and growth hormone, which you're getting in deep sleep and during exercise. They're not able to get to that deep sleep stage where they're getting this growth hormone and IGF-1 to their tendons. So it's hard. It's hard because now that healing is going to take a little bit longer because of the sleep and the tough parts with that. So I think the best tip I have would be try to fit in a nap when you can. Maybe have pockets of time. It's hard to try to catch up on sleep, and some research shows that we can't really catch up on sleep. But if you have those pockets on a weekend where you get to sleep in a little bit, or take a little bit longer of nap time or something along those lines where you're not getting constantly stimulated. Anything you would add?
Well, I think you answered the logistical way of like what to do, which is really what the question was. But I think in the midst of that, like be gentle and patient with yourself and the situation that you're in, because if you're constantly mentally saying, I didn't get a good night's sleep, and we talked about this, like I didn't get a good night's sleep, I didn't get a good night's sleep, or my baby's not sleeping well, he's in a, sleep waking up all the time, or what have you, like that mental energy that you're putting into that negativity is also not going to help your poor sleeping that's happening. And so I love the example of firefighters and stuff like that, because maybe they're coming home and they're like, oh, I'm exhausted or whatever, but I just think like really entering, when you do have those times of sleep, entering into the sleep with gratitude, I think probably would help a lot. Before you go to bed, thinking, and anyone can do this even if you do get a good night's sleep, like go to bed and think, oh, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to rest tonight. I'm grateful for this bed to sleep on, or if you're taking a nap on the couch, like this couch to sleep on. Or I know like my sister, when she had her first kid, she would nap when the baby napped during the day. And I know a lot of moms, like they kind of do the opposite. They're like, I'm going to get my fitness in during that time. Every person is different, but entering into, that sleep time with gratitude and a better perspective, I think probably would help as well.
Yeah. As you're saying that, and I was a little hesitant to share this because I'm still learning it and it's new. So if you know this method, please forgive me if I don't do it justice, but it's in those periods of sleep that you can get, that you do have a routine that allows you to enter into it. We have some friends with a newborn baby. Well, he's a little bit older than a newborn now, but he's still really young.
Yeah.
And it's very routine of, he listens to a Christmas album and that's a cue to him that it's time to go to sleep, even if it's nap time or it's bedtime at nighttime. But having something in the environment that is cueing you that this is going to be happening. And then this is a new thing that I've been learning, but the Navy SEALs, it's really this progressive relaxive muscle technique where the Navy SEALs learn this so that they can get quick sleep into deep sleep as soon as possible, no matter what environment that they're in. Because they may be out at war, they might be in this just unforgivable terrain, and they need to get some type of sleep because in the morning they have a lot of work that needs to get done. So they use this method to be able to quickly fall asleep, deep stage sleep, as soon as possible. And what I've learned so far from it is that they lay down, and what they do, and this is something that we can all do because we probably don't ask ourselves this a lot, how much tension am I holding in my face? Like we don't even think about holding tension in our face. We feel it in our back, we feel it in our necks, but we don't realize how much tension we have in our face until you consciously bring it to your awareness, and then you take a deep breath in, and then you let it out. And then another thing that you can do is you can contract your face. So you would grin like that, like as much as you can, contract all of your face muscles, and then relax it and let it relax further than what it was before. Let that relax your head, your scalp, your face, like let all these muscles relax. Then you work down to your shoulders, then you work down to your chest, your abdomen, your legs, and then down to your feet. The first few times that you practice it, you may have to stay at your face because it's keeping a lot of tension. Mm-hmm. You may be at your neck, you may be able to get all the way through it. But as you continue to practice it, you do your face and then instantly you're asleep. So the Navy SEALs have learned this method and they use it to be able to fall asleep in really terrible environment, bombs going off and cold and just terrible conditions. And they're able to use this method to get into a deeper sleep as soon as they can. So maybe that can work for you. Again, everyone's circumstances is different, but maybe that's a tip that you could use.
Yeah. Awesome. Mitch, thank you for that question. We hope that was helpful for y'all. Our second question is from Nicole, and Nicole actually watched our YouTube series. And so she asked, or she said, I was watching your YouTube series and saw the Handstand Push-Up Asymmetry one and wants to know what exercises can I do to get my first handstand push-up.
Nicole, thank you for watching that YouTube series. We have a lot of fun filming that. Basically, it's performance. It's a type of movement, and we go through. You can use these assessments to figure out why this movement's difficult for you, and then you can use that assessment to help yourself train to get better at that. And I'll be honest, we get emails for every subscriber that does it, and it's one of the highlights of my day is when I see people subscribe to it. And it's funny because it will come on my phone. It's just a notification through email, and a person will subscribe and I'll be like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, well, they can't hear that. And we're not able to email them back in that. But we are so thankful for people that are subscribing and watching the video and all that. So to the question, it was, what can I do to get my first handstand push-up was the question, right? Yeah. So it's a build-up process that you have to get through there. There's a lot of steps. Let's see if I can break it down into these components.
Sure.
Step number 1, you need shoulder mobility. If you don't have shoulder mobility, you should not be going upside down into a handstand push-up. Probably should not be doing an overhead press until you have adequate shoulder mobility. How much shoulder mobility do you need? Enough to get comfortably stacked overhead into that position. Tends to be around 170 to 180 degrees. 170, I even get a little, I don't know if I want our athletes doing it at 170 degrees. If we can get 180 degrees, that's going to be ideal because now we know the shoulders stacking on top of each other. There's joint centration. It's a healthier position. They're not compensating through the back by this big arch. It's just better for the body if we have that shoulder mobility. Don't skip steps. If you don't have shoulder mobility, work on shoulder mobility. Once you have shoulder mobility, which is the passive ability to get this thing up over your head. So this would be like, Brandy, take my arm, lift it up over my head. So Brandy lifted my arm for me. That's passive range of motion. Active range of motion is now me lifting it by myself. If we have passive range, but we don't have full active range, we do not need stretching. We need motor control, stability, endurance work. So once you have mobility, now we get into that phase, looking for stuff overhead, prone Ys, prone Ts, dynamic stability for the rotator cuff. Take care of that foundation first, and then start working towards it. Another thing I'll add into this bucket is, and we show this in the video, I think we do. Yeah, we do. We do show this one. But we're doing a vertical press up overhead. When we squat, we're so focused on equal weight through the legs. When we're doing a handstand push-up, one coach that I had, phenomenal coach, she told me, a handstand push-up is an arm squat. If you're doing an arm squat, make sure you have equal weight through your hands. And I was like, dang, I've never thought of that before, but that makes so much sense. But we won't have equal weight through our arms if we've only trained our dominant side and not our non-dominant side with dynamic stability. So we love to use a long sitting, bottoms up kettlebell overhead press test to see how many reps you can do it. Brandy hates this test. When we were filming it, she was like, do I have to be the one modeling this one? I was like, yes, because then people can see what it looks like if there's a asymmetry or deficiency that needs to be worked on.
Which I have.
Yeah, and you did a great job showing it, and you're working on it. So you want to make sure that you have that foundation before you ever even think of going upside down. Now that test is looking at dynamic stability of the shoulder, girdle, and core stability. Now we want to see what is your actual strength of it, because what you want to do before you get upside down is make sure with dumbbells or a barbell that you can press weight up over your head. If you can't do that, not wise to go upside down and then come crashing down on your head. So there's a safe way to progress towards that. One of the hardest parts of a handstand push-up is kicking up to the wall. So then you're probably going to have dedicated time after you've shown that you've had enough strength with a barbell and with a dumbbell to get it up overhead. I've seen different recommendations of how much weight should that be. I've seen people say it should be 2/3 of your body weight, 3/4 of your body weight. I'm a big fan of saying the more weight that you can press over your head with a barbell, then the better luck we're going to have. Not luck, the better success we're going to have with the handstand push-up.
Yeah. It'll transfer more.
It'll transfer more. But as you're working on building up that strength, you can start working on kicking up to the wall, doing it safely, having a mat underneath to get into that position. So all of those things come before you ever even attempt a handstand push-up. One thing I forgot to mention, you can use pike push-ups where your feet are on a box and then your head's on the ground, your arms are on the floor, and you're using that to build up reps and to get conditioned into being upside down, because your breathing changes when you're upside down, your stability is changing when you're upside down. So there are some things that you have to get conditioned to be able to do this. So all that comes before you ever even go for the rep of the handstand push-up, but it's worth it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like once you get it. But then once you kick up to the wall, we might just do an eccentric. Lower yourself down to the mat and then kick off of it. I'm a big fan of doing that versus having a bunch of things stacked up to where you're doing this little like shoulder rep of a handstand push-up where your elbow's bending 5 degrees and then you're pushing out of it. Like, I don't know how much benefit you're getting out of that. So I like to use the eccentric as long as you have adequate control.
Eccentric meaning going slowly down to your head.
Yep, slowly lowering down. And then once you get down to your head, you're kicking off the wall.
Right.
Like you're not pressing back up to it. That would be the concentric part of it. So yeah, working on the eccentrics, continuing to build up strength with the barbell, getting more comfortable upside down, and then go for a strict handstand push-up. Right? So many times people will go for a kipping handstand push-up first. No. You haven't built up enough strength to be able to earn the right to be able to use that power. Like people will do it, but that's when we start seeing injuries. So build the strength first, then go to kipping. I was actually thinking about this last night. Weird thoughts at night, but like if you're having trouble squatting a weight, you can use bands hooked up to something above you to help pull the bar up to get out. You can just take some weight off, but maybe you want to get conditioned to that weight. So I was thinking of this with a handstand push-up of what if we looped our feet into the band, hung the band over the rig, you held my feet, and then I could get more handstand push-ups in. And then I realized, no, that's not safe. That's not worthwhile doing.
Do not try that at home.
But I will say that's the hard part with the handstand push-up is there's not a lot of assistance that you can get from that. Like you can have a friend hold your legs. All right, push, and now I'm going to give you a little bit of a pop going up. But in reality, it's getting the pure strict strength, using dumbbells and barbells first, getting comfortable being upside down, and then that'll transfer over to it. Brandy, I want to know your thoughts on this because handstand push-ups are something that traditionally have been a challenge, not just for you, for everyone. It's a hard movement to do, but you've gotten to the point of progressing from pike push-ups to now kicking up to the wall to now being able to do an eccentric. And I think by the fall that you're going to be able to do that first handstand push-up.
That'd be so cool.
But anything I missed in there, or any advice that you have?
No, I think the biggest, to wrap up everything you just said, it's really just follow the right process, because I think we get so excited. Like when I walked into my CrossFit journey, I was like, ooh, I would love to do handstand push-ups or handstand walks or ring muscle ups. Like those just look like such fun movements, but I can't do them. And I've been doing CrossFit for a year or two now. I did CrossFit, but not really, for like a year. And then Dylan was like, you need to, when people ask you if you do CrossFit, you can say yes. And I just like felt awkward about it. So I didn't, but like in reality, I've been doing CrossFit for a little bit, but like I'm following the journey. I'm following the path. I'm striving to do it the right way that's the best for my body, you know? And so I really hope maybe by the time that this episode is launched, I can do one. That would be so cool. But I think, you know, for me, the thing that I didn't realize was that I would get dizzy a lot. Like, but the vestibular system, like my brain just goes crazy. And so building up the upside down work has helped a lot. And I think the other biggest thing, like obviously, Nicole, you're asking this question because you're excited and you are eager and you want to do it. But I also recommend, if you're eager and excited but also a little nervous, like do your best to trust yourself, trust the strength like during the process. Because I think for me, sometimes I'm like, I'm afraid I'm going to fall still, or I'm afraid that if I fall I'll get hurt, or I don't trust that I'm going to, when I do kick up, that my hands are going to be far enough out from the wall, like those little things. And so as you're building up strength, as you're doing the process that Dylan explained, also trust like your body and like what you're doing with your body in that, because I think that's also very important.
Yeah. So discipline,
Right.
Because there's so much temptation around it of, oh, but I could just go and kip, or I could stack up 5 ab mats and do an inch handstand push-up. And ask yourself, well, what is your goal, and what's the temptation that you need to be disciplined to? Because I will fully say this, that I very much used to ego lift all the time. For my first 3 years of CrossFit, I was with like my best friends, and we still all do it. We're just all in different parts of the country now, but we'd all get together, and it would be like we'd have an hour break during class. So we'd go to the CrossFit gym, and we would just throw down. And we look back at the way that we were working out and the way that we were training, and we were like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
Hopefully we did that so that we can coach people of exactly what not to do.
Right.
Like for one of us, it worked out, who's a CrossFit Games athlete.
Right.
But for the rest of us, we're like, okay, yeah, we were doing way too much too soon. For a long time, I could squat snatch more than what I could overhead squat. And that's still the case. And it's something that I'm now working on, because I realized I skip steps. Yeah. And yes, I can squat snatch and I can get heavy weight, but I'm doing it by compensating. I'm using the load to get into the position because I haven't created enough integrity to get to the position on its own. So now, after this is my 8th year now of doing it, I've had to go back with a PVC pipe and learn how to actually overhead squat to get in a better position to be able to actually snatch, because I just compensated. And guess what? I hit a plateau. And no matter what I did at that plateau, no matter how cute, no matter how fancy I got, I couldn't get past that plateau because I was compensating. I had to go back to square one, redo the fundamentals, and then to be continued. I'll let you guys know where we end up with it. But that's kind of been my experience, is I really had to take that step back, relearn everything, ask, okay, why was I attempting to do that weight? Why was I attempting to go at that speed? And it's because I was with my buddies, we were thrown down, and I didn't want to lose. So it was like, let's go. And it's been such an honor coaching athletes now, and Brandy as an example here with pull-ups. We didn't allow Brandy to do a kipping pull-up until she could do 5 strict pull-ups. And then in the open this past year, one of the workouts ended with pull-ups, and Brandy got there and repped out. How many did you get?
I think like 13 or 16 strict pull-ups.
13 to 16 strict pull-ups. The other people in the gym were like, how the heck did you do that? Because they kipped maybe 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
But she did these strict because she put the work in. Now she's kipping. We did the Murph. She did 100 kipping pull-ups.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, it actually was like pretty easy. Well, yeah, it's easy because you've put the work in for the strength. So it's very, very appetizing to dive in and skip the foundation, the fundamentals. And I'll say, from a physical therapy standpoint, most CrossFit athletes I work with, when we follow their journey, what brought on their injury was that they skipped these steps. So then we're working back at these steps, and then the coolest thing happens. We work on these things. Like, let's use a deadlift, for example. They hurt their back deadlifting. We go back, we find that they have this glaring hamstring asymmetry. We work on isolated hamstring strength. We don't do a deadlift for a while. We bring the deadlift back in, and they PR. And they're like, how the heck did I PR? Yeah. We haven't worked on my deadlift. Yeah, we worked on your limiting factor. And I wouldn't be surprised now if your squat gets better, if your jumps get better, if everything else gets better, because you took care of that limiting factor.
Right.
So don't skip steps.
Yeah, don't skip steps. And especially for, assuming that this is a CrossFit athlete, but specifically for CrossFit athletes, like if you're doing CrossFit, you're probably in it for the long game. Like you are doing it because you love it, and it's, you enjoy the way that it feels in your body and all these different things. But if you're in it for the long game, like do it the right way. And not to say other people are bad for the other, like you're not bad because you did it the way that you did it, but like if you did it the right way, you would be a stronger, better athlete now, but instead you're having to take steps back in order to go forward.
Right. Exactly.
So,
yep.
Great question.
Yeah.
This last question is from a listener named Aaron, and they ask, what is your perspective on trauma and how do we move forward from it?
Great question, Aaron. Is it Aaron or AA Ron?
AA Ron.
AA Ron.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that question. Very, very complex question.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll start by saying a lot of times we will go to comparison of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
My trauma is worse than your trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So that means I get to be more beat up than you are from this. And that's not the case. Comparison is a thief of joy. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to compare. If someone has had a trauma, that is their situation, that is their reality, that is their trauma. And you should never compare your trauma to someone else's trauma. I hear people say all the time, like, yeah, you know, I'm going through this divorce, but you know, it sucks, it hurts, but yeah, at least I wasn't like physically abused. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, stop comparing.
Yeah.
Like, you got hurt. You're going through something that's tough and it sucks right now. You've gotten the nope. You will get to the hope, but don't compare your trauma to other people's trauma. Don't downplay what you've gone through. Mm-hmm. How do we move forward from that? Or I guess what is trauma to begin with? It's when you have a preset boundary that somebody else crosses. Mm-hmm. Somebody else crosses that line. That's a trauma. It doesn't matter what that line is that's crossed. That was your preset boundary. Someone crossed it. That's trauma. Mm-hmm. Comes in many shapes, forms, and sizes, but it all hurts. It all hurts. So how do you move forward from this? And I actually saw this the other day. When you look at any superhero movie, there's a superhero, and for the superhero, there has to be some type of villain. Mm-hmm. The screenwrite is almost the same for every single superhero movie. Someone's gonna reach out and be like, no, not in this one.
Yeah.
Like, oh darn, you got me. But the superhero story tends to be that some shape or form that this person was orphaned. They lost their family, they had isolation. And then the villain story is somewhat similar, but they tend to have a scar, like a visible scar that you can see, like signifying that they were significantly abused. Mm. Both of them had traumas. The superhero then says, I'm going to do my work so that nobody else can experience the trauma that I had to go through. So I'm willing to completely sacrifice my life to prevent anyone else from doing this or having this happen to them. Where the villain says, because I got hurt, I'm going to go and hurt everybody else in there, right? So we don't want to be the villain. We don't want to go and use the Hammurabi code, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. We're not going to go out and traumatize people because we've been traumatized. And I don't think that's ever the goal or the intention.
It's like subconscious.
It's subconscious and it can happen. But what we can do is start to turn that into something different. We can start to say, no, this might be the nope or the obstacle that I was delivered to guide me. This rejection is maybe a redirection. I'm being redirected into a passion where I can go and help people. I can go and help people prevent this thing from happening. And I think when we look at these really great success stories, a lot of times that are long-term successful, we see what they did in order to help society because of the struggles that they went through. Mm-hmm. Robin Williams is a great example. Phenomenal actor. I didn't know this, but he was paid $8 million per movie that he was on. Uh-huh. When he was asked to be the voice in Aladdin, he took a significant pay cut so that he could leave something behind for his children and his grandchildren to like further appreciate. Whenever he was given a role, he would make sure that wherever they were shooting, that homeless population in that area, that I don't know the percentage, but a certain percentage of them were hired to be on that film as background actors or actresses. Wow. So his legacy is going to live on.
Mm-hmm.
But there was trauma that he had in his life that then led him to say, hey, even though I'm making $8 million per movie that I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make sure that these people that are sleeping on the streets are going to get some of this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing is let's use that now in a positive way. And then the last step of, and maybe this isn't the best time to say it because it was how do I move forward from it? And this tends to be the last step, but I think is the highest return on your investment of time and energy. It's forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of misconceptions with forgiveness. With forgiveness, you're not giving permission for you to be hurt again. You're not giving permission for that person or event to hurt you. You're giving yourself permission to move on
Mm-hmm.
from that event. And when you do that, your perspective also starts to change. And you start to see that situation from a different light where maybe that person or that event, you start to see that, oh, man, I wonder what happened in their life that brought them to this point that they had to hurt me that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like you start to have empathy for that person that hurt you, that person that you thought that ruined your life, that person that you, and this is a strong word, but that person that you hate,
Mm.
you actually start to feel for them. Forgiveness is powerful. It is hard to do. Oftentimes you have to do it before you're ready to do it. It's very challenging. And in hope coaching, it's one of the last steps that
Mm-hmm.
we get to. And some people never do it.
Yeah.
They decide that carrying this weight and keeping this baggage is better for me than going into forgiveness because I'm still really challenged by that.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope at some point that they are ready for that because forgiveness and it's quoted in the book Hope Not Nope of this is that when we have traumas, they tend to be this like this weight that's holding us down. It's like doing a back squat with all this weight. It's just pushing you down and you're trying to push back up against it and you're fighting, but the weight's winning.
Mm.
The weight is just winning. It's pushing you down. And you decide, you know what? I can get this bar off my back. I
Yeah.
can throw it behind me. Now that 300, 400, 500 pounds, whatever that weight is, now you get to stand up freely.
Mm-hmm.
And when you stand up freely, you're going to feel this weightlessness that you haven't felt since that bar has been on your back. It's challenging, it's difficult, but it will completely shape you into the person that you're intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like forgiveness is key, but it's hard to get there.
Yeah. Forgiveness is so hard. I remember going through a situation and I look back on it now and I can honestly say it was probably one of the hardest things I'd ever gone through. But during the time, I had thought I had already gone through all of my trauma. I thought that whether it be my childhood or my young adult years or whatever, like I thought that that was like the trauma. But then I had a personal friend kind of like walk out on me basically. And that friend was like the one that knew all the stuff, right? And so that that trauma was so hard, but I didn't get to a place of forgiveness for a while. But from the time they walked out, I was like, no, I forgive them. No, I forgive them. No, I forgive them. When in reality, I was like you said, I was still in the bottom of the squat and I was telling myself, I forgive them because didn't want like I didn't want to go through it. I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be like, oh no, I forgive them and like brush it off. But I had to really like go through like why they hurt me, why it was affecting me, what beliefs I was believing. Or even like there was a moment where I was like, if our friendship would have continued, this could have happened. And like I had to mourn like future trauma that could have happened, right? Like there were so many layers to this situation that I went through. But I got to a place where I really realized that even though I kept saying that I forgave the person, I hadn't actually let go of the
Mm-hmm.
person. Um, and so I got to this place where I was really just like finally like at my ends. It had been like probably 2 years, if not more, since the situation had initially happened. And I was like, I wrote them a letter that I never sent them, but I
Mm-hmm.
wrote them a letter explaining all the ways that they hurt me, but all the ways that I hurt them,
Mm.
I had to own that I also hurt them. But then at the end of it, I was like, despite all of this, I do forgive you because you can't hold this over me anymore. And the more that I held on to the lack of forgiveness or the trying to brush it off, like the more I was in the bottom of that squat, the more I let them dictate how I was acting to other people, how I was trusting other people, the relationships that I was in, and even like my work and my eating, like all of that was being affected because I really hadn't forgiven and let go of that person. And I think that there was this like idea that I had that if I forgave them, that meant that I was keeping the door open to become best friends with them again. But I realized that that pressure of like not burning a bridge or keeping the door open or constantly reaching out to like check in on them, even though like they made it clear that they didn't. I mean, they didn't make it clear in the sense of they didn't tell me to stop reaching out. They just basically ghosted me. But like instead of trying to force it, I finally like I let go and I realized I can forgive them, but I don't have to be their best friend ever again. I don't need them in my life consistently. I don't need them to control, like I was letting them control me even though they weren't even in my life anymore. And like I don't know, for me like forgiveness was so key in my healing journey. But you do have to have courage to forgive. Like forgiveness is hard. I don't want to say it's easy by any
Mm.
means. It took me multiple years to forgive this one situation, and I know, and not to compare, but I know people have been through worse trauma than I have been. But I do believe that forgiveness is the most freed that you'll ever be in this life. If you can truly forgive, you'll be the most free and you'll be the most healed and you'll become the person that you're intended to be because of that.
Yeah. First, thank you for sharing because I know it's a hurtful
Yeah.
but triumphant story. But I want to point out everything you said in there was extremely important. But there's one thing I really want to touch on that you said, I never sent her the letter. Right? We perceive that forgiveness as calling that person
Right.
or getting a dinner with them and making it this big event of candle dinner and I forgive you.
It's
No,
just not
it's
necessary.
not necessary and it's not for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Like forgiveness is it's selfish,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a good selfish to have. It's for you. So write that letter. And what I like to have people do is they proclaim that forgiveness while seeing themselves in a mirror
Mm.
or recording it in a safe thing that's just for them, almost as like having a witness
Mm.
of that forgiveness for themselves. And I've been looking for opportunities to put this analogy in during this entire recording, and now is the time.
Yes.
But
Tell
I'm
us the
like, do we
analogy.
build up the suspense and then go for it? But love learning about animals.
Mm-hmm.
Learned the other day that there's one bird that attacks eagles, and it's a crow. I don't know why a crow attacks an eagle. It's like kind of like, wow, talk about courage. Like it's like David Goliath. Like, why is this crow attacking the eagle?
Mm-hmm.
But the eagle knows I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm faster than you. The eagle does not attack back physically. What it does, because the crow's attacking like the backside of the eagle just flies up as high as it can because it knows that the crow can't withstand the pressure of being that high.
Mm.
So as the eagle's getting attacked, it overcomes by elevating to a new level that the thing that's attacking it has to go to a lower level and get out of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening with forgiveness. That event, that person, whatever that trauma that had happened, that's the crow attacking you. If you stay in that same spot, the crow's going to keep attacking you. And then you have to decide, how are you going to attack it?
Mm-hmm.
Where instead, you can fly to a whole new height, get to a whole new elevation, and that crow is going to have to get off your back.
100%. I think that just to add on to that, I love eagles. This past year, I feel like I've seen like 30 of them randomly,
Yeah.
which is pretty bizarre for where we live in the country, but I feel like they're stalking me. But which I'm not complaining. They're so beautiful. But as you're saying that, and I was going to mention this earlier, but then I was like, no, but it came back up, so I'm going to say it. But I think that in this world, people who have faced trauma can get this quote unquote like victim mentality. And I will say, like, you are a victim to some sort of trauma, but you don't have to live in that mentality. And we don't know this eagle's story, right? But this eagle was being attacked, but was not submitting to the victim mentality, and instead rose above and empowered themselves, and eventually like they were the one victorious, right? And so I think that whatever trauma you've been through, or the reality is you may face trauma after you listen to this. You don't have to submit to this like woe is me attitude. You have the opportunity. Yes, you do need to process it. Yes, you do need to mourn or struggle or whatever. Like there is a process to it, but you don't need to stay within this victim negative mentality, because you are a whole person and you are a gift, and you can be empowered to live a great life no matter what you've been through. You have an opportunity to live a great life ahead of you. Your life is not over, and whatever trauma you've been through, like your life is not over. Your life is beginning. And so be hopeful, become that eagle, and go fly, go soar.
Yeah, I have nothing to add on to that. That was beautiful.
Oh, thanks, Dylan. And so that was our last question, Aaron. Thank you for that question, because I feel like it really blessed us to be able to kind of talk about it, and we're so thankful for it. And Nicole and Mitch as well. Thank you so much for asking the questions. Head over to Instagram or our website and ask us more questions, because we love getting to have this conversation, because we want to empower you. And that's really what this is all about. We want to empower you. We want to encourage you. And so please go ask us more questions, rate, review, subscribe, and share this with a friend, especially if your friend maybe has gone through trauma and you just want them to know that they're not alone and they have an opportunity to live a great life ahead of them. Send this to them, and so that they can be encouraged, and that you can now empower them because of this message.
Have a great week, and remember, every day is not just a day to be hopeful. It's an opportunity to become hope.